I'm Amber Hunt. I'm a teacher at Reedley High School and a mediator for restorative justice.
I'm Elizabeth Beatty. I am an instructional coach for Kings Canyon Unified, and I also mediate for RPBI.
It started in December. These two girls, I think they were sophomores at Reedley High School. They were friends, and then at some point during the fall, they stopped talking, and the friendship stopped. And there was confusion between that. And one of the girls, she happened to be very violent. She went up to her used-to-be friend and wanted to ask about the friendship. And the other girl, she was with her new friends. She kind of just pushed her off and didn't want to talk about it when the violent girl then attacked her. And it was a pretty violent attack. It could have gone to the court, but we stepped in and we saved it.
It absolutely could have gone to the court. It was a very intense attack. It resulted in medical treatment and a hospital bill.
So the RPBI director came to us and asked if we would take the case, and of course we did. We love taking cases together. We love seeing how these kids change after the process of mediation. So we started out by meeting with each family individually. We talked to the victim and the offender with their parents.
Yes, we initially made phone calls. We reached out to contact the families initially as part of our process. And then we ask the families to please come in and meet us face to face. That initial meeting just is a way to just make them feel more comfortable, get to know us, and trust us to run the process the way we've been trained.
And in this case especially, the offender walked into my classroom and she had walls up. I mean, she was very defensive. She was like, I didn't even think she was actually sorry. And that worried me because for this process, the kid has to reflect and realize they made a mistake and they have to truly be sorry to heal. And so we looked at each other and we were worried that it wasn't going to work out because the offender was just like, no, she's not my friend. I don't care what I did, and we were really concerned. And that's when Liz came in and was really blunt with her.
We just reiterated to her that she needed to be willing, and that if she was unwilling to go through the process, that we could return her to the courts, and that the judicial system could handle her case. So we just kind of tried to convince her that we were a better alternative. But yes, when she entered the physical space non-verbally, she was very, you could just tell, very angry. When we spoke to her, she would not make eye contact. So yes, I was very direct and very blunt, which isn't a problem because we're in education. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we have to just be very direct.
And the mom was with us the whole time, though, even though the daughter wasn't really into the restorative justice process at first, the mom, we had her support the entire time. And I think once we really talked to the offender about how she physically hurt the other student and how there was actually a medical bill, they had to go to the doctor, I think something clicked and it was like, oh shoot, maybe I need to change.
So I'm just thinking of her and thinking of that initial meeting and how just so rigid she was, and then I'm just fast forwarding to the very last encounter I had with this victim, and it was out in public. It was at a retail store, and she came up to me, she approached me and just gave me a huge hug. She had a huge smile on her face. Her mother was very happy, and just thanked me again for being willing to work with her daughter. So it was just night and day for this child, from the initial meeting until now. And I also, and we'll get there, but when we did wrap up her mediation, we let her know that we were going to continue to be a resource for her and her family. And if she still needed anything from us, just to talk to an adult woman, somebody who maybe she couldn't talk about certain topics with her parents or her mother, we wanted to be available for this young lady. And you could tell she really owned that. Well, I felt like she really owned it, because when I did see her just out in public, she could have ignored me or just smiled and kept it moving. But she stopped. Her whole face lit up, and it made me feel so great about the work that Amber and I do for these young people. After we contacted both families, met both families, had them on board, they were in agreement, we went ahead and set up the mediation in Amber's classroom, and we had both families come in. The physical arrangement is the long rectangular table. We put ourselves on either end. We put the victim and their family on one side, and we put the offender and their families or support system, because sometimes they bring other folks that are important in their lives. We put them on the other side, and then we just ask. Well, I usually ask if I can.
Liz starts with
If I can pray over the mediation process. Luckily, I haven't been told no yet. So, and that just usually sets the tone. Everybody knows that we're there from just a place of love and a place where we want to help. So it kind of lowers because even the parents, when they come in, they're pretty nervous. They're embarrassed. They don't know what to expect. They're thankful to us that even this process exists, so that their child doesn't have to go straight to the judicial system. So that usually lowers their affect, and then we get started. Amber starts it off.
Yeah, I usually go over the rules, and for the main rules are no yelling, no language, and you actually have to listen to the other person speak. I think that's my favorite part about the mediation process, is when the offender is speaking, the victim is listening, and then after about 30 seconds or so, we ask them to pause, and then the victim has to then tell the offender what they said. So it's very active listening, and they do it for both parts. So everyone involved, when the victim's speaking, we stop them, and then the offender has to paraphrase what they were saying. And it really makes them listen, not just la 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 la, I'm here but I'm not here. They're listening, and they're taking, everything in that's being said. Once we get started, there's always a letter of an apology we make the kids write. And so the offender, she read her letter of apology to the victim and her family. And that's a really good place to start off, because all the emotions start coming out, walls start breaking down, and we can get to the root of the problem. After the letter's read, then we let the victim talk first, and the victim says whatever they need to say about what happened in the situation. So for this mediation specifically, the victim talked about how they were friends and how she decided that she didn't want to be friends anymore, and she met new friends, and then how the offender just came and attacked her, and then the offender repeated everything back, and then the offender got to talk. And that was the most interesting part, because we found out really that her feelings got hurt, because she didn't understand there was a miscommunication between these two girls, and it was the offender was like, why aren't we friends anymore? She never had an explanation of why, and that's really why she beat the other girl up. And in the end, after all feelings were said, and they came to the conclusion that they weren't actually going to be friends anymore, but they were going to be okay seeing each other on campus. They could say hello, and there weren't going to be any hard feelings or anything. And where I actually got emotional on this one, because the offender was so tough at first. She really wanted everyone to think like she's this bully, and she broke down, and she looked at the victim's father, and she apologized to him, she apologized to the entire family. She was like, I'm so sorry for what I did to your daughter. And then I was like crying, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. It really is. In the court, this wouldn't have happened. These girls wouldn't have even had a voice. And we gave them all the power to fix this problem between themselves. And I cried a little bit, but it was a really
amazing.
Great case. Yeah.
It was a very touching case for us. The parents were very satisfied. The father, I think, really appreciated that, because as along with their daughter, the parents are victimized as well. Not only do they have to pay the bill, they're fearful for their daughter's safety. Can she come back to school and be unharmed? So they have lots of concerns, and rightfully so. So I think that was a very powerful moment for that father, and he thanked her for taking that step. And then the offender's mother encouraged her to also apologize to the girl, and at that moment she did. And we're just really hoping to give these kids some tools that they can use, some social skills like the active listening. That's really important, and if you're not explicitly taught to do that, it can be very it can be unnatural. So once we I don't know, lay down the rules of active listening and talk about the process, it seems to go flow from there. But I also had another situation with the offender. I was a substitute for the learning director position at Reedley High School, and during that time this offender came through the discipline office. I was there to greet her, and I was the one to deliver her discipline. She had done nothing wrong, but there was another situation where a young girl felt like she could be in trouble. She felt like maybe this girl was going to attack her physically. So when I met with this offender, I said, okay, well, what's going on? And when I talked to her about it, her response to me was, don't worry, I promised you back in December, was it January that we did? Back in January, I wasn't going to do this anymore. So she made the connection back to that I was her mediator. I had worked her last case. She had made a promise to Amber and I both at the end that she would not reoffend. We also reminded her that if she did, it would go back to the judicial system. So that for me was my moment of being emotional, because I thought, wow, this young lady really trusted us. She feels comfortable. She has built a relationship with me, and I believed her when she said she wouldn't reoffend, and thus far she has not. So we feel like it's been one of our favorite success stories. The reasons that Amber and I volunteer our personal time to be mediators for RPBI is because we believe in our community. We have a small community. We believe in our students. We believe in our families. And some of our families just need help. They need strategies. They need tools to be able to be parents to their children, to encourage and to give their children what they need to be successful as adults. And so we really try to support not only the young victims and the young offenders, we also try to encompass the family.
Many of the offenders that we get, they're actually good kids. They go to school, they get average grades, if not good grades. They just get mixed up with either the wrong crowd or just lack of communication between the parents and the offender. Many of our parents, they work 2 jobs, or they just, like Liz said, they don't have the skills to parent. And the kids, they take advantage of that, and then they go have fun, which that fun gets them into trouble. Since I'm a teacher on campus, I really enjoy seeing the kids. I see all of my students every day, but a lot of them aren't the restorative justice kids, and so it gives me an opportunity to see more kids on campus. I love seeing kids coming in and getting to know them, and then I tell them at every mediation, I'm here on campus, I'm room 706, if you ever need anything, I'm here. And a lot of them take that to heart, and now when they see me on campus, they'll say hi to me, even though I've been their mediator and I've seen them, and some of them, like, they think their worst time, they still feel comfortable enough to talk to me and say hi to me on campus.
I think also it takes the whole shame and embarrassment factor away from it, because we just diffuse it and let them know, like Amber said, you're not bad kids, you just made a bad choice, and we're going to help you and your family work through this, as well as the victim and their family. And like our young lady who was the offender, her actions came from a source of pain. She was hurt by this girl. She didn't know why she didn't want to be her friend, but she didn't have the communication skills. Well, she actually did try to approach her and talk to her verbally first, but when she didn't get the response that she wanted, she didn't have the tools to then work through the process or say, hey, maybe later on we can meet up when you're out with your friends, or can I call you later? Instead, for her at that point, her pain had turned to anger, and she had no other way of expressing it than through physical action. When I talked to her also, I talked about anger and how to manage that. I personally am a very angry person, and I have lots of tools to manage my anger. I may think something, but I can't necessarily speak that to somebody, and that's what I taught her. I said, you can think things in your mind all you want, but you cannot project that out into the world. We also talked to her about her language, because she did use quite a bit of profanity, and we just let her know, it's not a professional look. It's not very classy for a lady to speak that way. And in the other 2 encounters that I spoke to her, she did not use not one foul word. So I think she just really took it to heart. Like, wow, these are 2 ladies who are giving up their time, who care about me, and I respect that. And we just saw a whole softer side to her. I mean, this is a young girl, and I feel like now she's got a chance to really
I think
to
so
be
too.
successful.
And during the mediation, we make them talk to us about their future goals for life. And if they don't really have any, we kind of talk about what we've seen in them in the short time and what they could possibly be good at, or just give them ideas, even in high school, clubs, programs to get involved in. So we really just try to push these kids to be the best they can be. I mean, we're humans. Everyone makes mistakes. It doesn't mean their life's over. And we want them really, to be successful.
We want them to come and function in our community and be members of this wonderful small town and be productive as part of the process. At the end, to make sure all parties are satisfied, there is a piece of restoration. These can include such things as community service, maybe repainting facilities if there's graffiti done, paying medical bills. The case that we spoke a lot about today, there was a substantial medical bill that had to be paid, and it was paid the very week of our mediation, which is a much better satisfaction rate than the courts.
It doesn't have to be community service or paying money. It's really just varies case by case. Sometimes a letter of apologies, that's it. That's a huge thing for a kid to do, to sit down and type up a letter telling them what happened, and then that they're sorry. They've never done that before, and so sometimes that letter of apology is restoration in itself.
In that letter also, at the end, we make them write about their goals for the future. Amber and I really want to know, what's the future for these young people? That it can include usually career. They'll talk about which career path they'd like to take, what they would like for their own personal family. If they'd like to get married, have children, if they'd like to stay in the community or move on. And we just try to, like Amber said, match maybe their strengths to something that they can later turn into a career.
Yeah, I always ask them what classes they're currently taking. Since I'm the French teacher, if they haven't taken a foreign language, I usually encourage them to take French, just so that I can keep an eye on them again.
And like she said earlier, we also just let them know about community programs that they can join that will just keep them off the streets, keep them out of trouble, and give them something positive to spend their time doing.
RPBI saves younger community members from having a future they may not have wanted. It brings our community together. It makes us all stronger. The schools, the police, and churches all work together to save these young community members.
As a community member myself, it's important for me to have a safe place for my children to grow up.